and welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to be here this evening for me to talk with you about community impact, because there are so many overlapping benefits to community impact, from a student's personal development to the impact on the greater community, and of course, the way that it's viewed and appreciated from the college admissions standpoint. So this is really the perfect example of something in the admissions process that is a win-win-win. And I want to start today by addressing the admissions perspective. So why is community impact important to admissions? And to start, I want to emphasize that we're using the phrase community impact, which is something different than community service. And I think that's an important distinction. So what colleges are looking for, especially at selective institutions, is meaningful and consistent impact over time. So why is that? Well, when universities and admissions officers are considering applicants, they want to understand who the students are that are going to make a difference immediately on campus and ultimately are going to prove to be productive and impressive alumni. So first, let's consider the on-campus piece. So colleges and universities have hundreds of student organizations that run every year and contribute to an active student life. So colleges are looking for students who are going to show up and get involved immediately and contribute to a vibrant campus life. And additionally, colleges are looking for students who demonstrate initiative and the qualities that are going to make them eventual leaders in their chosen fields. So they understand that when students engage in sustained and impactful service, they're developing the skills already that are directly related to the things they're going to be doing professionally. So when I say that, that doesn't mean that they're going to be necessarily working in a nonprofit environment, right? What it means is that they're developing skills that are going to assist them in terms of whatever their career ends up being. So collaborative work, creative problem solving, developing empathy, critical thinking. So many skill sets that are going to be desirable both by colleges and by future employers. So there's a jump start in terms of personal development that is attractive to colleges. And all factors that admissions reps use in evaluating students, from grades to course selection to the extracurricular profile, all of these things, all they really are just proxies. They're just stand-ins to try and unpack the student's impact over 4 years on campus and their potential beyond. And so when a student has activities on their application where they demonstrate investment and meaningful impact, where they can grow over time, they can take on leadership roles, they can initiate projects, it's just an indicator that the student will be an asset to campus life and ultimately a credit to their institutions. But beyond the benefits to the college admissions process, there are, of course, benefits to expanded personal outlook and a service orientation. And this happens to align with many universities' missions. So let's dive a little deeper into this piece by looking at Turning the Tide. So Turning the Tide was an initiative that came out in 2016, but it's really been a core element of the way that universities think about the selection process. So Turning the Tide was a reaction to the concern that the admissions process was making high school too much like a factory. So students were completing checklist items to be strong candidates for admission, but they weren't personally connecting to why they were doing these things. And so Harvard wrote a report highlighting that the goals of admissions officers and college prep professionals should be to emphasize certain criteria in the admissions process that would better connect to what the selective colleges were looking for. So selective colleges were looking for, to create an environment with good citizens who make meaningful contributions to others. And so they started thinking, how can we redirect this admissions process to reflect this? And over 150 selective admissions officers endorsed the report. And these are some of the topics that were covered. That we should be promoting more meaningful contributions to others, community service and engagement with the public good, that we should be assessing students' ethical engagement and contribution to others across diverse communities, and that we should be refining the definition of success and reduce excessive achievement pressure. And you can argue that this is still a work in progress, right? We are not at any point right now where we are perfectly reflecting these values in admissions. But I think that these points speak to the desire of colleges to see students who engage with their community, not just to check a box on an application or to complete the minimum number of hours of community service to graduate from their high school, but because it's a part of them living their values. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. And this is also important to understand from the side of those supporting students in the application. So college admissions, counselors, and parents, right? So for example, the report recommended following what they call an ethical GPS. And that essentially refers to having a moral compass through the process. And they also wanted to emphasize that students be authentic, that they self-reflect and connect with what they truly care about. So you see specifically here the recommendation that parents should help their teen contribute to others and to their community in meaningful ways. It's also about setting the example, affirming students' connections to others by modeling and encouraging a level of gratitude. And I would add to that empathy, right? And a willingness to see the world through lenses other than their own. And all of these qualities are byproducts of service activities. So you can see how this is all connected. So colleges are looking for students who have certain soft skills like gratitude, grit, empathy, open-mindedness, kindness, right? But these are difficult to demonstrate just by looking at a transcript. They're much easier to demonstrate through activities. Through a student's choices about how they spend their time outside of the classroom. So it's easier for colleges to see through the activities profile what students care about and their willingness to advocate for those things. And I just wanted to highlight a few examples of some of the many statements that we have from various universities, just to make the point that these are universities that are actually looking for students who are going to make a difference in the world. So here is the one from Harvard College. So Harvard College is specifically the undergraduate program at Harvard University. And I want to highlight a few key parts here. So you see that they want students, they want to educate the citizens and citizen leaders for our society. They're emphasizing building a diverse living environment, and they're spelling out that this is about engaging with and learning from people who bring diverse experiences to the student body so that students can be challenged in new and different ways intellectually, and through the intellectual transformation, they can create the conditions for social transformation. So they are essentially, I know that's a lot of words, but they are essentially spelling out that they want to create social transformation and leaders who are positioned to work for the social good. And because of this, it's not a very far jump to say that they're looking for students who already self-reflect on these values, who assess their own interests and what they care about and the causes most important to them. And they are dedicated already to how they can best serve the world. And then similarly, at a place like MIT, which is very in close proximity to Harvard, but a very, very different kind of college experience, right? It has a distinct culture. You know, MIT is obviously much more focused on science and technology, but still notice that even at a place that is more quantitative in its focus at the core, they're founded on the idea that they want to serve the nation and the world. So they want to make sure that they have students who want to focus on solving the world's great challenges for the betterment of humankind. So again, we see learning in terms of these colleges' missions, not just for the sake of self-benefit and not just to one day be able to donate a building to MIT, though I'm sure they would not mind that, right? But they're really focused on how a student's gifts are ultimately going to serve the greater good. So when students are able to create a significant level of community impact and demonstrate this to the colleges, they are aligning themselves really effectively with what these institutions are asking for and what they're looking for in terms of creating a community. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about service and the skills that students can develop. So, if you're a teenager, it can be difficult to understand, parts of the world that are outside of your immediate orbit. So participating in activities puts students in a position to build a better understanding of the world and develop practical skills. And we'll talk about that a little more in a second, but these are essentially experiences that broaden a student's perspective and drives personal growth in terms of building connections with others, boosting confidence, and finding a voice. And this becomes a conduit to them feeling more liberated to seek out other experiences and new opportunities. So whether it's activities, internships, academic projects, jobs, they begin to approach the world more actively. So when you're engaging in service, it's not only a way to help others, but also to help yourself. Every experience is an opportunity to learn and refine your interests and figure out more about what you care about, how you engage with society, and how to become a better human. And there are so many different ways of engaging with service that can be platforms to professional development. So I think often when we think about service, there are a few sort of typical, volunteering at a soup kitchen and doing things that are, a little more show up on the day. And those are, of course, very, very important. But there are also a lot of ways to involve yourself in service that are actually about providing the skill set that is going to help launch you in certain directions, right? So, students in terms of giving themselves, donating time to organizations, they can learn social media, they can learn PR, graphic design, SEO program management, event management, tutoring, right? These are just a few. And I think when students take on these kinds of roles, growth happens quite organically because there is natural momentum that comes from knowing you're doing important work that makes a difference. And often what we see is students who begin service with an organization, they want to grow with that organization over time because they're motivated to make an even bigger impact. They are following along with, what this organization is able to do, and they want to contribute even more. And the other piece that I want to highlight here is that when top institutions are looking for students, and looking at what they pursued outside of the classroom, they're looking for breadth, which is the range of activities that they've, become involved in, depth, which is how deep their commitment has been in those activities, and impact, in terms of what they've been able to create, what opportunities have they created for others. And they are looking at these in ascending order of importance, with impact being the most important. And then if you imagine taking just that top piece of the pyramid of impact and zooming in even further. So here is a top level view of the way that colleges evaluate impact. So think of many, many students being able to achieve the lower levels of impact, and then smaller and smaller groups of students being able to achieve at the highest levels. And the more students maximize their impact, reaching further corners of the greater community, the more that they're able to stand out from the field. So levels 1 through 3 are essentially having an impact for your own enrichment and benefit, which, of course, are very, very important. High school is all about growth and developing yourself. So that is, of course, an important level of impact. Moving up to level 4 to 6, it's having an impact on your high school community. And then levels 7 to 9 are when you can have an impact beyond your high school, in your community or state, or even nationally or internationally. And again, not everyone is going to reach those top levels. In fact, only a very small percentage of students are going to reach level 9, being able to make an impact in their, on a national level, on an international level. And even students who reach these top levels, they're not going to be reaching them with every activity that they participate in, right? That would be impossible. But especially for the top institutions, it very much helps when students have 1 or 2 activities at this caliber. And so doing something with an eye toward deepening impact in a wider community, sets students apart. And to clarify, I should say that there are many students who attend excellent colleges who don't have that level of accomplishment on their resume. You know, that again, it's a very, very small percentage, but the ones that do, that have high level impact, can stand out from the pack most successfully. So I want to explain a bit more about Standout impact. And this is commitment that goes beyond pure participation and moves into being something that is resonant from an admissions perspective. And it can be aligned with the student's own academic path. So, you know, it could be that a student is interested in business and they're doing something in community impact that has to do with business, right? That we see sometimes, but also it can be something very different. And it's just about rounding out the application. So the key components of Standout impact are that it's, one, self-initiated. So this doesn't mean that a student has to necessarily create a new organization, although many students do. It can mean that it's something entrepreneurial, where a student works with an existing organization, but is thinking creatively to create something new within it that is meaningful to the organization or helps its mission, right? So again, creating opportunities for others. It is personally aligned. So that means it speaks to something that is important to a student's authentic values. And when students participate in activities that resonate with them, they're both going to be more motivated and they're going to demonstrate how they live their values, right? So those are both really, really important. And we saw earlier, important to the colleges. Something that is effectively executed is more likely to have a higher impact, right? And this also relates to measurable, meaning how are you able to judge that the execution is effective? And there are many, many different ways of measuring impact. It doesn't just have to be, for example, about raising money. But when you're able to measure your impact, you can speak about your impact much more clearly so that people can understand how it compares to versus something that is a lot more like plug and play community service. Growth oriented is also very important. So whether it's personal growth or growth of others, right? So usually with these kinds of projects, there's growth on both sides, which is what makes them, so amazing. And other-centric doesn't necessarily mean it's not a benefit to you, right, as a student. It just means that it's a mutually beneficial experience. It means that you are more selfless in the process, thinking about others and not just yourself.